going on? Welcome to the Creator Factor podcast. I am your host who loves you the most, Ozeal, and we're back with another segment of Creator to Creator. And, I got to admit, I'm really enjoying these episodes with Creator to Creator because, I get to dig into just the real, raw conversations with creators just like you who are in the trenches, who are in the grind. They're building their brand, they're building their communities from the ground up. So I'm really excited about this one because this is a homie of mine who I got right here, right next to me, who I'm known for a few years now in the podcasting space. And, it's just been a pleasure seeing this brother just evolve from being a podcasting leader to being a speaker, entrepreneur, now like an AI influencer expert. I mean, he's doing all the things, We're going to talk about that in a bit. And of course, if you're a podcaster who loves to attend events, I've probably seen or heard him speak at some of the top events like Podfest and Podcast Movement, just to name a few. And he's also an award-winning podcast host, best-selling author, an influential voice helping business owners transform their brand, y'all, through innovation, AI, and everything in between. Ladies and gents, let's welcome to the show none other than my man, the man with the red hat, Larry Roberts in the building. Larry, what's going on, my man?
Was having Ozeal, man. That's quite the introduction there. So I got a lot to live up to over this next 30, 45 minutes.
I was about to start rapping for you, bro. I was about to rap the whole intro for you, man, But, hey, man, well deserved. I'm excited, man. I know we talked on the podcast before, and I mentioned, we've known each other for a minute, man, in the podcasting space. And just, obviously with, shout out to boy Moses of Podfest. You were here in Houston. I think we've done like the last 3 events. You've been them. I know you're a native fellow Texan, so got to represent Texas.
Born and raised.
Yeah, man. It's always great to see you here, brother. So I'm excited to kind of dig in, man, and just vibe. Well, first off, how you been, man? How are you feeling? What's the energy like over there?
Man, the energy is high. The energy stays high here because we just don't have time to even settle down and let it get low. There's so much going on. Always reaching out to, there's so many people in the podcast space that are looking to grow their shows, looking to get their shows launched, looking to monetize, looking to do everything that they want to do and accomplish their goals with their shows. So I'm constantly doing outreach and working with people and talking to people and just, like I said, trying to help them achieve their goals while at the same time, if I can be selfish a little bit, trying to achieve mine too.
You've been doing it, bro. And that's the reason I reached out to you, because I've been seeing you from the sidelines, in addition to everything you've been doing with supporting everything with Podfest and all the other projects that you got going on. You're a podcaster yourself. Again, you've written a book. Take us back, man. I'm curious, I don't think we really talked about this. Take us back to 2014, bro. I mean, how did you get started on your podcasting journey? What was the first time you were like, all right, I kind of like this thing. Let's do it.
Well, there was a kid that I worked with at the time, and he was a big podcast listener, and he kept trying to get me to listen to this Joe Rogan podcast thing. And I'm like, dude, I don't have time to listen to some silly podcast. He's like, no, dude, because I'm a huge fight fan. So I've been UFC fan since 93, since it hit the States.
Right on.
Back in the day, I owned a karate school and did a little competing myself. So always a big fight fan. So he goes, you know what? You know who Joe Rogan is. Just listen to this podcast. So I finally gave in and I listened to an episode. And on that episode happened to be 2 cats that one of them now has the #1 podcast on YouTube. As a matter of fact, even bigger than Joe Rogan as we sit here right now. His name was Tony Hinchcliffe.
Okay.
And it was Tony Hinchcliffe and Joey Diaz were on this episode, and they're both comedians.
Yeah, I know Joey.
And they're both very, very blue comedians, meaning they, drop a few bombs from time to time, and they tell little off-color jokes from time to time. And being someone that was raised in the 80s on Andrew Dice Clay and Sam Kinison and Robin Williams, and the list goes on and on, I was like, dude, this is my kind of stuff right here. And so it hit me. I'm like, so people can just start these podcast things? And Ryan was like, yeah, dude, you can start one if you want to. So I was like, I've got to do this. If I can tell these kind of jokes and not end up in HR, this is where I need to be. So I went out and bought the literally the worst podcast mic you can buy. And this is no disrespect to anybody that's using one right now, but it was a Yeti Snowball. And I mean, it's literally a USB mic, and it looks like a snowball. It's white and it's round. It's about the size of a softball. And I partnered with one of my good friends. His son was an open mic comic here in Dallas. Jamie Gravitt is his name, and he's crushing it now down in Austin. I got with Jamie and I said, hey, dude, I want to start this podcast thing. Are you in? He's like, yeah, let's do it. So we gathered up in my den, which is just on the other side of my studio here. And we took the stand off of the one microphone, the one Yeti that we have. And we sat down on my ottoman there. And I gently cupped that white Yeti snowball microphone. And I said what I had to say. And then I gently passed the mic to Jamie. And he would grip it in his little hands. And he would say what he had to say. And we would pass it back and forth. And that's how I did my very first podcast episode. Now, that one never got released because at the same time, I said I'd heard Tony Hinchcliffe and Joey on there. They were pretty foul. And so I told Jamie, I said, man, let's just take it. Let's just go extreme with it. And we did. And so when we listened back, we're like, bro, we can't release this. There's no way we can. You can't say that stuff, even on a podcast. You just can't let that out.
Right.
So that episode never got released. However, that was the birth of the first podcast. And I'll tell you the name of it. It's got an innuendo in the name, but it was called Accidentally the Whole Tip.
Okay.
And that was the name of the podcast. And I'll let your imagination take you where you need to go with that. And man, it did extremely well. It did super good.
Well, comedy is like it's a hot genre, man.
Dude, and especially back then, it was pretty easy. It was pretty easy. You know what I mean? Because the podcast space it wasn't as big as it is now. And, you get a couple dudes on there, and we were interviewing anywhere from adult actresses to crazy lawyers that have the crazy commercials on TV. And I mean, we just had a wide variety of guests. We had another group out of Canada that did a custom intro song for us. I mean, you name it. It was rolling. We took it to a live stage show here in Dallas, and that evolved into an open mic here in Dallas. And it was one of the largest open mics outside of the comedy clubs for about 7 or 8 years here in North Dallas. Wow. And people were coming from Fort Worth and Dallas and all over the Metroplex to do their comedy at our open mic. And the only reason the mic shut down is because the facility that was hosting it, they shut down. So that kind of killed the mic, but it did its thing.
You were still podcasting throughout the whole lifespan of that?
Not the whole lifespan of the mic, because about, we'll say 2 years, and it gets a little blurry because it's been 10 and I'm old, but we'll say about 2 years in, I finally got that knock on my office door at work. And so we need to have a little chat in HR. And so what was happening was people were wearing my merch to the office.
Look at you, man. Look at you.
And they're like, bro, we can't have this. I mean, because, it's not right. And it's not appropriate for a professional work environment. And even though I never mentioned the company that I worked for, or even what I did, I mean, it was complete separation of work and hobby. They were still like, one's got to go. It's either you or the show.
Wow.
And so ended up having to kill that show. And at this time, I mean, I had to kill the show, but I still love podcasting. But I didn't know anything about podcasting. I had lucked into that comedy show working out. So I started an interview-based podcast. And again, not knowing how to start a podcast that was clean, or how to leverage a podcast, or how to brand a podcast, or how to build an audience. Again, we fell into the success of the first show. I ended up naming the show Readily Random.
And what year was this, Larry?
This was I started in 14, so we'll say 16-ish.
About 16-ish.
Yeah,
okay.
about 16-ish.
I remember.
I think
I remember when you had the show. Okay.
Yeah. So I did that one for several years, and I mean, a couple hundred episodes, if I recall, right?
Yeah, I remember you.
And I interviewed everybody from actors on like Ozark, a couple of the stars from the Ozark show on Netflix. Got a couple of those on there. NFL Hall of Famers, mixed martial arts Hall of Famers.
It lived up to the name, huh? Random.
Yeah, it was completely random. And that's where I was going, because I mean, even one of them was my favorite. I interviewed the top American origami artist, because I do love some origami from time to time. And
interesting.
I got this professor. He's a professor at MIT, and he's the cat daddy American when it comes to origami. And had him on the show. Nobody gave a rat's backside about listening to it, but I sure enjoyed it. But, it finally got to where along about 17 or 18, I went to my first podcast conference. And then I started getting an understanding of how the industry worked, how branding worked, how building a show worked, how growing a community worked. And I started realizing there's an opportunity for a business venture here as well, because I've always been a side hustle kind of guy. I've had a swimming pool company back in the day. And I mean, I worked eBay to death and had a couple of other ventures we won't get into, but always had a side hustle. And I'm like, this podcast thing, this could be the new side hustle. So started figuring it out. And then I realized, you know what? This doesn't necessarily need to be a side hustle. This can be the top dog. This can be my primary source of income. This is it. Yeah. This is an opportunity here. So over a couple of years, I figured out the industry. I started figuring out the industry. I'm still figuring it out today. But I finally walked away from my 21-year career at the same company, January 4th of 2021. So now we've been out on these mean streets for nearly 4 years doing this thing full time. So it's been exciting.
All right. So Readily Random, you were doing the podcast.
Yes.
Talk to me about that transition out, man. And you know what? Before we get into the transition, what were some of the biggest challenge? Again, I call this segment Creator to Creator because I really want to talk. I want to get in the trenches with you, man.
Sure.
Talk about, what were some of the challenges even early on, being a creator and some of the things you had to deal with managing the day job, right? And then still, obviously, you saw the backlash for the first podcast, but even Readily Random, you were doing all the side hustles, you had the job, and then just still trying to operate as a creator, man. Talk to us a little bit about what that felt like going in the trenches with that.
Yeah, man. I made it extremely hard on myself because of the name. But again, I just didn't know. And at the time, there weren't nearly the resources that we have today.
True.
I learned initially everything I know about podcasting by going to YouTube and watching JLD and watching Pat Flynn and watching Cliff Ravenscraft. I mean, those were my influencers back in 2014.
Those are all the OGs. Yep, I remember them.
All the OGs. And, they're amazing, and they're still amazing to this day. But I would get bits and pieces of, do this, do that, do this. And I'd try to tape it all together. And next thing you know, I've got this Readily Random that's put together with duct tape and zip ties. And it just really didn't have any direction or any stability. And that was the big struggle. Coming off of a show that just stumbled into significant downloads and then going to a show where each episode I'd be lucky to get 15 to 25 downloads for an episode. Super frustrating, super disappointing, and it had me kicking rocks for a long time trying to figure out what this thing is all about. And honestly, until I started going to podcast conferences, my first one was Podcast Movement.
What year was that, by the way?
That was, I think that was 18 or 19.
18, okay. All right.
Yeah, it might have been 18. And so I went to PM, and then I ran into, all these other creators and saw there were other people out there that had the same struggles that I had, and they were going through the same things that I was going through. And we bonded together. I've still got friends to this day that I met at that very first podcast conference. And we've been together, every step of the way, growing in this industry. But once I found a community of like-minded creators and I could bounce ideas off of people and learn from their mistakes, I started realizing, okay, here's what we need to do. But at the same time, I'm a pretty hard-headed guy. And I was not going to let go of Readily Random. It just wasn't going to let it go.
It's hard, man, right?
It is. I'm like, I can make it work. I can make it work. My company today, honestly, it's called Red Hat Media, but that's just a DBA. My LLC is still Readily Random Media. Okay. So if you really break it down, my company's still Readily Random at the root.
Couldn't let it go, bro.
You just can't let it go.
That's what those are the root.
But, at that point, I started going, okay, another year or two passed, and I started getting some a better understanding of the industry. And I was like, all right, let's make some changes. So I went through, I don't know how many different brands, how many different launches, how many different shows. It had to be 8 or 10. And my wife's got every business card that I ever had for every brand, every show, that I tried to go through. And it's kind of funny when I go look at the pegboard because they're all there, Yeah. And I'm just like, my God, I was trying to force things to happen that just weren't necessarily meant to happen. And, eventually I accidentally stumbled on this red hat, and that just exploded. And that literally changed everything.
All right, man, let's talk about the red hat. Cause I remember seeing that change. And then I was just like, I saw the red hat. And if you guys catch this on YouTube, you can see my boy has the red mic pop up there on
got
it.
The little pop. Well, it's kind of funny. We're sitting here on election day, bro. And I don't know if this is, I don't know how, but I got a little red one. You got a blue one.
Yeah.
So
what we doing?
It's kind of an election vibe here.
That's right. Good point. That's a good observation, bro. I didn't think about that. That's right. Happy election day, y'all.
But I do want to say that my hat has nothing to do with anything political whatsoever.
And we got the red, blue, and we're having conversations.
Yeah.
We keeping it respectful. We boys. We fam. All right. No, let's okay, Red Hat Man, talk to me
Yeah,
because I know there's a story behind it and I saw
there
the whole
is. Yeah,
rebrand and I know
yeah,
you started going deep into branding, which one of the things I really love about you, man, before we get into that story is I'm very big into branding. I think it's something that gets overlooked. I think it's a
yeah.
common mistake a lot of podcasters make, and I think it's even more important to pay attention to the packaging, not only of the way you flow as a podcast host, because I believe now podcast hosts, especially with the inclusion of video, even it's even more important to be able to get that brand dialed in, whether it's your tone, your messaging, the way you look, your vibe. It's all part of the branding in addition to like being on and off the mic. It's all packaged together. Anyways, without going on a tangent, because you know I'm passionate about branding as well, let's talk about the Red Hat, brother. Throw it back at you. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I and it's we're here on Riverside, and we don't have a lot of width in my camera. Let's
Yeah.
see if I can get it over to the side there, real quick, so you can see that hat right there. If my camera, so right
Yeah, we can
behind
see
me,
it.
there's a Supreme. Where's it at? There it is, the
Supreme.
Supreme hat. So I
Wait,
was
bro, do
doing a
you have
talk
it like just chilling right there, or do you have it actually in a little
it's in a
glass?
glass case.
Oh, I
So because
was like,
that's
do you have it in
the
a glass?
yeah, I got it all
Okay,
mounted up. I mean, that's a trophy because that's the
okay,
birth
all right.
of the red hat.
Talk about it.
And so let me straighten my camera back up here. I was doing a talk in Tampa, Florida at the Amalie Arena. And I had got up there and I was wearing that Supreme hat. And I gave my talk. I think I was speaking on building courses for monetization or something. And I come down off stage and a good friend of, and you probably know him as well, Alex Sanfilippo, good friend of mine. He goes, hey, man, great talk, whatever. Because Alex and I, we always give each other grief when we come down from our talks. You know, we just teasing each other, just having fun. And he goes, but seriously, dude, why are you wearing that Supreme hat? And I was like, man, I'm just trying to be cool. I got my Supreme hat on. I got my Rock Revival jeans. I got my Jordans. I mean, I'm branded to the hilt, right?
Yeah.
He goes, well, are they paying you? And I went, well, no. I mean, I'm a middle-aged white male. They'd probably pay me not to wear it, in all honesty. And be like, hey, bro, please don't buy our shit, right? So, sorry about that. But
You good.
that's kind of how it felt, you know? And he
Okay.
goes, well, if they're not paying you, then why are you wearing it? And he goes, but I love the red. Because I'm a big guy. You can't really tell here in the video, but I'm about 6'3" and I'm about 2 something. And he goes, with that red hat on your head, he goes, bro, I can see you from across the stadium. I can see you all the way across the arena. It wasn't a stadium, it was an arena. And that really resonated with me. So I went home and I tossed the Supreme hat to the side. I went on Amazon, bought a $6 unbranded red hat, and the red hat guy was born. And it just spread like wildfire. I mean, I wore it everywhere, and it's about 5 degrees to the right. You know, that's just that's got to have, they can't be off right on center. It's got to be off center a little bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, I show up nowhere without the hat. I mean, it's on no matter what stage I'm on, no matter what the audience is. I mean, I could be in church and I'm wearing the red hat. It is not really, but probably, you know what I'm saying? And people just expect me to have that red hat on. And within about, I'll say 6 months, I went to Bitcoin Miami, which is a massive Bitcoin conference, one of the largest in the world. 30 some odd thousand people were there. And I was there as a podcaster creating content. And a couple of people over the course of 3 days that I had never met in my life walked up to me and go, oh, you the podcast guy? And I was like, yeah, yeah. How do you know that? They go, oh, the red hat. And I was like, whoa, this is for real. This is for real. So from that point on, man, you know, I snagged me a little DBA. Everything else was rebranded as Red Hat. And it just grew and grew and grew from there. And to this day, I mean, it continues to get me clients just because people recognize me wherever I go. I went to a meeting at the National Speakers Association just a couple of weeks ago. And their head cat here in Dallas reached out to me. He goes, hey, man, I got some questions. I'd love to talk to you about branding. And all I ever think about is that red hat of yours. And so I wrote him back. I said, man, I love it when personal branding comes together. And he goes, dude, and you do it better than anybody. So I was like, I was blown away. I've only met this cat one time. And just because it shows up everywhere and it just reinforces, people don't know my name. You know, where I go, even in podcast spaces, a lot of people don't know my name, but they know the hat. They know the red hat guy. And that's made the biggest impact in my career to date. And the red hat gives me the freedom to do a whole lot of things that I probably couldn't get away with if I didn't have that very strong personal brand that's underneath the red hat. Because the red hat's what gets me in the door. That's what gets the conversation started. But what a lot of people don't understand is the brand is everything that's under the hat. The brand is how I treat people. The brand is how I engage with people. The brand is how I run my business. The brand is how I treat my clients. That's what the brand is. This red hat's not the brand. It's just a moniker. It's a logo. It's a symbol that says, hey, this is the guy. It gets me the attention, but everything else is what's underneath it. And that's, I mean, you can see my book in the background on this side here. It's called Under the Red Hat. And it's all about personal branding because that's where the brand is. It's everything that's underneath this hat. It's not the hat itself.
Yeah, we got to make sure we link that up in the show notes. Speak on the importance of what I was sharing earlier, man. The importance of, do you agree or disagree that personal branding for creators specifically is more important than ever before? What do you think?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, again, having a strong personal brand is what gets me speaking gigs.
Yeah.
It's what gets me clients. It's what gets me the attention that we're all after. I mean, Gary Vee says it best in the fact that we're all out here day trading attention. We're trying to get attention. And the best way to do that is with an extremely strong personal brand. Get something that makes you stand out from the crowd, then reinforce that personal brand with you as an individual and what you bring to the table and what your personal values are and what you're looking to do for people and how you're looking to help people and how you're looking to grow yourself. So it's you have to stand out. There's more content out there now than ever before, and it's not slowing down. And I mean, we're starting to see, especially traditional media, television, it's dead. We'll call it even dead. I mean, look at Hollywood. Hollywood can't even produce a movie right now that makes any money unless it's some big brand movie, you know, some big superhero movie. Everybody's going to YouTube. Everybody's going to podcast. Everybody's going there to get their media, to get their entertainment. And in order for you to stand out in those millions and millions of videos that are out there, billions of videos that are out there, you have to have something that makes you stand out, and that's a strong personal brand.
Give us a little bit more about the whole standing out, because I feel like with standing out, man, it's a bit of a easier said than done type of bold statement, right? I mean, let's talk to the creator who's like, look, man, I get it, but what if I don't what if I'm not comfortable? Do I have to find like a piece of accessory, an item for me to put it on? Is that my branding, or do I need to put on a persona for my branding? I know you talked about like the way you do it for your clients, but speak to the creator out there who's maybe like an extreme introvert. I mean, and they're thinking about like ways to stand out. And I'm pretty sure you talk about that in the book, but can you speak to the creator that's like, all right, man, do I need to get like a pink hat or you know what I'm saying? What I need to do here, Larry?
No,
talk to us.
I hear you. And it stumps a lot of people because they go, well, what can I wear? As soon as I start talking to somebody about personal branding, they go, oh, well, I can wear different jackets. Or a friend of mine, Brian Galke, he's a big speaker on like the national circuit. He's the cat daddy. He's known for wearing his vests. So, that's one way of establishing a personal brand. But another way of building a personal brand that doesn't necessarily have to put you on a stage or put you out in front of people is in the content that you create. Creating high value, highly focused content that has a unique vibe and a unique feel to it. Ozeal, you bring an entire vibe to every event that you're at. As soon as anybody says Ozeal, I picture the hat, I picture the beard, I picture the hip hop persona that you have at all times. So that's your brand. You don't have to have, we ironically both have hats that seem to be our brands, but because I can't really picture you without that particular hat on, but it doesn't have to be a hat.
Yeah.
It's your entire vibe. It's your entire, your persona. And again, it's your persona online. How are you showing up online? Do you show up in a very selfish manner where you're just trying to get people to engage with your content? Or are you getting out there and building a reputation and building a brand of engaging with other people?
Yeah.
I mean, that's an excellent way to do it. Get on social media, get on LinkedIn if you're a business person, get on Facebook or Instagram or wherever you may be that your people are, and engage with people and build your brand virtually online. I mean, that's an excellent alternative. But the thing there is, and what makes, for me personally, the hat so consistent and so easy is that I wear hats anyways. I've always worn hats, and they've always been cocked to the right 5 degrees. So it was nothing for me to just fabricated fall into this vibe. Yeah, it's 100% authentic.
Yeah,
it's not. It's funny because back in the day, I used to think I was Vanilla Ice. Okay, and I would word to your mother.
Did you know all the words, man?
Of course I do. Of course.
I did too.
But it's kind of funny when some of my friends would call. My wife would know who I'm talking to based on the way I was talking. Because it was some of my homies, I would go into homie talk, and I'd be like, I'd be using a different vocabulary, a different vibe, and I was relating to those people that were in that clique,
Who
right?
gets it, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then when some of my more business related people called, and I would be talking proper grammar and I would be speaking, so, but you have to find something that's real for you
Yeah.
in order for it to connect with everybody.
Yeah.
And you don't see me now going, you don't see me doing a lot of popping and locking anymore. You know, you don't see me doing any of that anymore. Yeah. Doing the rerun, because that's the size I am nowadays. I'd have to do the rerun. So you have to find something that's legit, something that you don't have to fake, because if you're going to fake the funk, it's going to fall apart. You just can't do it. So find something in your personality, find out who you are, and then leverage that to your advantage. Don't try to fit a hat. Don't try to fit a mold. Fit you and put you out there.
Yeah, well said, man. Well said. Like, you just, in my head, I was just thinking of like, all right, that's a perfect example. And I love the breakdown of like, just personal branding is getting just really super comfortable with your rawest self, like your most authentic self. And that is your personal brand. And I believe, even for my introverts who are listening here, there is a goofy side to all of us. There is a side that when you're in your world and nobody's watching, that is the most authentic version of yourself. Amplify that. That is probably your personal brand. And I know when people meet me, it's like same on the mic. If off the mic, you meet me, just like you said, the hat, the urban, the hip hop. Yes. And you could look at my past. I was an MC. I was part of a hip hop alternative band. I was a break dancer for many years. I toured. I am a B-boy. So whenever, and it took me a while, because when I had to put on the podcasting voice, I had a little bit of it. Actually, there was a tad bit of it, but it was like, okay, now I'm like radio. So I got to like be the radio dude. And then eventually I got, just putting in the reps, I got more comfortable. And I was like, look, I'm not the, hey guys, welcome to the, no, I'm like, Ozeal, be who you are. You have a great voice, just relax, be urban, be hip hop. And bro, I mean, that's, and the fact that you said it, like, you met me a few times, and the fact that you said those words knows that I'm on brand. And I think I want to encourage creators, if you're listening to this, watching, is to get back to that authentic self. When nobody's watching, your goofy self, that's who you are. So,
yeah,
right?
100%.
You know what I'm saying? So I just want to piggyback on what you just said, because I feel like you nailed it, bro.
And don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of it. You're not going to be for everybody. There's a whole lot of people out there that don't like the red hat guy. I don't know who they are, and I don't want to know, but I know they exist. You know what I'm saying? I know they're out there. And that doesn't bother me, because I can't be everything to everybody, and neither can you.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to build a personal brand that is everything to everybody, you're going to fail miserably, and you're going to get super, super frustrated, because it just doesn't work that way. You have to find you and find the tribe that vibes with you. And that is where you start leveraging that brand.
That was good. Good stuff. We could talk about this whole segment. This whole episode could be about personal branding. I'm telling you, this is a man of many hats. No pun intended. He does it all. We could talk about a lot of things. All right, man. Let's talk about podcasting real quick. I'm gonna talk to you about this. But podcasting. If you were to launch a podcast, man, and this is something that and this is a question I'm very passionate about, because especially with OGs like yourself, if you were to start a podcast now in 2024, 2025, moving forward, man, where the state of podcasting, where it's at right now, what would you do differently? Like, what's changed aside from all the tools? But what would you do differently from a branding standpoint for or people who are trying to get into the podcasting space?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's kind of what we do. That's what we do at Red Hat Media, is we launch branded podcasts. So this is the core of my business. So what we do is we figure out what your brand is, and then we build a show around that brand to support that brand and support the audience for that particular brand. But in order to do that, you got to lay the groundwork. You got to know what the show is and who the show is for. When I created Readily Random, it wasn't for anybody. It was just, I had the Joe Rogan delusions of grandeur kicking in, thinking that Joe Rogan does it, I can do it too. Well, you got to understand that, no, you can't, because creators like Joe Rogan and Alex Hormozi and Gary Vee, they can break the rules. They can do whatever they want, because they've already got an established audience that people are going to listen and watch regardless. But we, as new creators, we have to establish that brand. We have to build that audience. And in order to build that audience, we have to know who they are and what they look like, and then create our content to speak to that particular audience. So that's the first step. What is your passion, and who shares that passion with you? Because if you're going to start a podcast, you're going to want to talk about something that you are passionate about. You're going to want to talk about this. What do you talk about 24/7? What are you obsessed with? Whether it's a hobby, whether it's a television show, whether it's a genre, whether it's your business, whether it's marketing, branding, it doesn't matter what it is. What can you talk about 24/7? And based on your perception of that topic, who else out there would want to engage with you on that? So once you identify that audience, you can build the show around that audience to deliver that content in a way that they're going to consume it. Because that's something.
So you're saying, I'm sorry, real quick, Larry,
No.
you're thinking audience first then, right? So what I'm hearing is that in the past, when you and I started, you can create a general podcast. You know, I want to interview the latest entrepreneur back in 2012, 2014. But what I'm hearing that what you're saying now is the landscape has changed where you have to think audience first in order to create, you know, to align it with the brand to have an effective branded podcast. Is that what I'm hearing?
100%, 100%. Now, again, dial it back to your passion. You know, don't try to talk about something because you believe there's an audience for that topic, because you're going to pod fade just like anybody else.
Yeah, we saw a lot of those Bitcoin podcasts, you know.
Sorry
about that.
I've got cover art where, what was it called? It was Bitcoin Impact, I think was the name of the show that I was going to start on Bitcoin. Thankfully, I never pulled the trigger on that one. But again, you heard it right. You know, find your passion and then find the audience that also shares that passion with you and then build the show around that. There's roughly 2.5 million podcasts that are out there right now. But only about 18% of those are active. Right. And I think that's an impactful number. It's huge, dude, because that just shows you that so many people start podcasts and then they fade off. Yeah. You know, I write the Podfest Messenger, which is Podfest newsletter, and I feature 4 podcasts in every issue of the newsletter. And most of these are not most, but all of them are independent creators. And it would surprise you when I go back and look at some of the podcasts that I featured, how many of them aren't running anymore. They're not publishing content. Yeah. And some of these people were, in my opinion, very influential at the time, but now they don't even have a show for whatever reason. You know, that you still have the old schoolers that are still out there doing their thing, and that's great. But those are so few and far between because the people that start these shows, they don't lay the foundation. You know, they don't look to who's going to consume the content and who they're creating it for. So I think that's very, very important. And it also, you know, we were talking about audio only. I think you have to have video, you know, and we're not going to jump into the whole tech side of things, but these days you got to have both. You got to have audio and video. You got to be on YouTube. YouTube supports podcasts now. You know, they shut down Google Podcasts and YouTube consumed Google Podcast essentially. So get out there, get your show on YouTube, start doing video, get your videos on Spotify, any place you can put video content, put it out there for your show, and just diversify your offerings, because I mentioned creating content for your audience and creating it in a way that they consume it. You have to understand how they're consuming the content too. Some people don't listen to podcasts. I don't. I watch podcasts.
You watch podcasts. Yeah, okay.
I turn them on YouTube. But I don't listen to podcasts. I very rarely have listened to podcasts. Everything that I've done has been on video.
Really? And, that's crazy, bro. You know, even that you say that, because you and I come from an RSS feed, audio only.
Yeah.
There wasn't much video. Here's a little fun fact. I don't think I've actually shared this out, or have I? The first podcast that I was introduced to, this was about 2010, 2011, were 2 video podcasts. One of them was Mixergy. I'm not sure if he's still around. Andrew Warner was the first entrepreneurial podcast. It was another podcast called Rise to the Top, and it was a video entrepreneur podcast. So video podcasting isn't new, y'all. I mean, it's been around for a minute, and then it went audio only, RSS, and I was listening to a lot of audio. But it's interesting that you say that, bro, because I've noticed my consumer behavior has changed drastically, and I watch and listen to the YouTube. Like, it's weird. I don't know if you do this. I'll wash the dishes, and instead of going on my phone to listen, I'll have my laptop and I'll have the YouTube video.
Yes,
you do the same thing.
Playing on my phone. I'm doing the exact same thing when I'm loading up the dishwasher before the wife gets home doing my chores. I will have a YouTube video sitting there on my phone as I'm doing my household chores,
and I just
watching my
podcast. See, so it's like.
Yep.
It's changing, but you're right though. It's audio and video now as a conversation, and I think that's it's really interesting to see the consumer behavior, even for us OGs that have been listening to audio only, that our behavior is changing. I think it's
So you
crazy.
got to take into account too, the first podcast that I listened to was a comedy podcast. It was, well, Rogan. It wasn't really a comedy podcast, but then they had the comedians on there. So what did I start listening to? I went over and Tony Hinchcliffe's podcast, Kill Tony, which is the #1 video podcast on YouTube right now, which I've also been on twice. Did not work out very well for me, but it was still fun. And then Joey Diaz and his show that he had at the time, it's dead now, but it was The Church of What's Happening Now was the name of the podcast.
I didn't even know he had one. Okay.
Yeah. And he's got another one now, but I can't remember the name of it. But that's what I started consuming. And it was all comedy. And then I went over to Tom Segura and his wife, Christina P. of Your Mom's House. And, all I did was watch comedians' podcasts. And then I started diversifying my intake and understanding, this isn't just a comedy platform. This is a business platform. This is an educational platform. This is a therapeutic platform. This is everything that you could possibly want. There is a podcast for it. So that's when I started understanding that the industry brought a lot more to it than just a bunch of laughs and giggles.
I started seeing a shift in you, man, and just your whole personal brand and the way you were taking it. You've always been a cat that is always, you adapt new things. I feel like what's the word? Not adapt, but you adapt too, but you adopt. Like new technology, new things that are going on, and you learn it and then you teach it. I've seen you, you did a master class with us back in the day, and I've seen you just teach on a lot of topics. And then I started noticing you kind of was like, oh, is Larry going heavy into this AI thing? And I remember it was AI was kind of coming out and ChatGPT, and I saw you transitioning into learning this whole world of AI. And you've actually now you've been on stages to talk about it, been on TV. It's been crazy to watch you, bro. I'm telling you from silent. I'm watching you, man. I'm watching you. And but it's dope. I'm proud of you, man, because I love seeing evolution, right? I love seeing that. And I'm curious to know, man, your whole take on AI and its impact on the creator economy moving forward, man. Where do you see this going? Is this only the beginning? Where are we at, man? Talk to us.
Well, I'll say right now, it's only the beginning. I mean, that's
the worst it will ever be. That's crazy if you think about it.
Yeah. It's only going to get better and deeper fast from here. Yeah. And something that most people don't understand, Ozeal, is that I didn't just jump on the AI bandwagon, but in my professional career, as I mentioned, I was with a company for 21 years. I was a business intelligence analyst. That was my career. So I was using AI before AI was cool to look at massive amounts of data and do predictive analytics. And we were leveraging the Microsoft Business Intelligence Suite, which is AI driven. And so I had already had a background in using AI to a certain extent. Now, not from a creator perspective, but as soon as I saw ChatGPT, I was like, oh my God, this is next level. Ooh. And it just happened to work out because ChatGPT dropped in November of 22. And in January of 23, I was able to do a talk at PodFest on how to use AI to create content. So it was only out about 6 weeks before I was on a massive stage talking about it. And I gave the same talk back to back for 2 days. And probably 600-800 people, or so saw that talk over those 2 days. And that kind of put me in the position as the AI guy in the podcast space, at least to a certain extent, especially at first. Now, there's a couple of others that have popped up that are amazing. So there's some great guys out there. And I think that's what you're going to continue to see as well, is more and more people are going to adopt AI, and they're going to start leveraging it to a greater extent. To what extent? It's hard to say. Recently Google released the Notebook LM.
Yeah, Google.
And you can upload a PDF to that thing, and it creates a podcast for you based on a PDF. And it's got 2 different voices carrying on a conversation about the PDF, and it's all AI driven. Now, it doesn't sound very good. It sounds very, very dry. It's emotionless. I think it's great from an educational perspective if you're trying to learn something. But
it's pretty damn impressive, man.
Yeah. No, it sounds good from like a lecturing perspective.
Right.
From a podcast perspective, I don't think it's there yet. I wouldn't recommend it. And again, Alex Sanfilippo, who owns Podmatch, they just did a survey last week that showed it was 90+% of podcasters surveyed. I think they surveyed like 800 podcasters, and over 90% said they did not want to be interviewed by AI. So, I mean, that shows you that there's resistance in the marketplace from adopting AI from a creative perspective.
Right.
Now, I don't necessarily know really anybody that's doing podcasting on a large scale that's not using AI to some extent in their workflow. Whether they're using platforms like CastMagic or they're using Descript has some powerful AI that's built into Descript, and the list goes on and on and on of all these other platforms that are great for podcasters that are using AI. I mean, look at CapCut. CapCut uses AI to cut out your small reels and your shorts for you. And I mean, one of the coolest things, and you may or may not know this, but when you're doing a video like on your phone, you're trying to maybe read the teleprompter. CapCut has this new feature where it will adjust your eyes so that people watching can't tell you're reading the teleprompter. It looks like you're looking at them.
I didn't know that.
So yeah, it's freaking insane, dude. It makes making videos so easy because you can just sit there and read the whole thing, and then AI will adjust your eyes so it looks like you're not reading anything, that you're talking to the viewer. I mean, just stuff like that is just next level. And we're going to continue to see the evolution of content creation with the foundation rooted in AI, whether people like it or not. I don't mean to be too abrasive there, but a lot of people are super resistant, and that's fine. But I wouldn't resist it too much. I'm not the first person to say this, but it's not AI that's going to kill the creator or take all the jobs. It's the people that understand how to use AI that are going to do all the creating and taking all the jobs. So we got to keep that in mind. And it's almost like the internet. You know what I mean? People were resistant to the internet. They were resistant to computers. But look where we're at today. And I know a lot of people will call BS on this, but I could promise you, I grew up in a trailer park, and I remember computers were just coming around. And I remember sitting on the prefab steps that led up to my trailer. And I was telling a friend of mine, dude, I freaking hate computers. They're stupid. I'll never use a computer. That's the dumbest thing ever. Really?
And you're like,
you're going to use it. You're going to use AI. I promise you. You're using it now, and you just don't even know it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think with anything new, it's always, scary, and there's always going to be some resistance. And we've seen it through, just the beginnings of all generations, from the industry when it transitioned into the informational industry, et cetera. So I think we're going to continue seeing it. And you're seeing it now, like, what is it? Apple have AI. We're going to see it more and more incorporated in our daily lives. It's been really cool to see early on ChatGPT and seeing it evolve to where it's at now. And it's moving so quick.
I mean, I use it every day. Do you not use it every day, Ozeal?
I use it every day, bro. I mean, I'm not gonna, I love it for ideation, for titling, which I'm sure you talk about as far as how some tools that you use. Actually, let's talk about that, man. What's in your toolbox, man? What are like your top 3 to 5 like go-to recommended AI tools for all my content creators out here?
Well, ChatGPT is always going to be number one. Let me show you why. Hey, Megan, you there?
Hey, Larry, what's up?
Hey, I'm sitting here on a podcast with my boy Ozeal, and we're talking about ChatGPT. How can podcasters use ChatGPT to their advantage? Give me 3 examples and keep them short.
Absolutely. 1, content creation. ChatGPT can help generate topic ideas, scripts, or questions for interviews. 2, audience engagement. It can assist in crafting personalized responses to listener questions or comments. 3, SEO optimization. It can generate show notes and social media posts to help boost discoverability.
Hey, Megan, I appreciate it. I'll talk to you later, okay?
You got it, Larry. Catch you later.
Bye-bye.
Shout out to Megan, y'all. Megan from Creator Factory Appearance. That's crazy. That's what I'm talking about.
That's ChatGPT right there. That was ChatGPT.
Crazy.
So, and I named her Megan after the movie Megan. If you haven't seen that, you check it out. It's an AI robot that goes crazy.
Okay.
That's why I named her Megan. But
I wanted to call mine Christine. Remember that old? Remember
the car, dude. Yeah.
But I was like, I gotta do that.
That's amazing.
Anyway,
but yeah, dude, ChatGPT is numero uno for me, man. And I use it all the time. Whether it's for ideation, whether it's for show notes, it doesn't matter. I use it literally every day.
How does that compare with Claude, and what's the other one? There's another one out there that I forgot.
There's Claude, there's Perplexity, there's Meta, there's Llama, the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
Google has Gemini. So there's
Gemini.
A ton
Gemini
of
is the one. Yeah. Gemini, Claude,
Gemini's
and then ChatGPT. How do you compare it to those two?
Yeah, I have subscriptions to both ChatGPT and Claude.
Okay.
Because there is a distinct difference between the two and some of the functionality that's available on both platforms.
Okay.
ChatGPT, in my opinion, you have to be more well-versed in prompt engineering. You have to be able to craft very in-depth prompts in order to get a nice sounding response.
Mm-hmm.
Now with Claude, it sounds more natural. It sounds like conversation. Whenever you ask Claude a question, you're going to get a very, very conversational reply back. So it doesn't sound quite as tense, I guess, as ChatGPT. Doesn't sound quite as sophisticated as ChatGPT. It sounds more human. Now, there are ways, and why I use ChatGPT first and foremost is because there's ways that you can teach ChatGPT to sound just like you. And that's one of the talks that I do. Actually, it's one of my most popular talks right now is getting ChatGPT to sound just like you. So once you get that dialed in, I generally still stick with ChatGPT, but Claude's great for beginners to have those natural sounding conversations and get those natural sounding responses.
All right, so we got Claude, we got ChatGPT. What else you use?
And you had mentioned Gemini. Gemini's coming around. They had a rough start. One of the things we have to keep in mind with any of these AI tools is that there's an opportunity for bias to be in the data that it returns. And that's because they're trained on data that inherently has biases as well. So what they did with Gemini was they put code in to try to eliminate the bias. And it went a little haywire on them. So people would be doing inquiries about historical figures, and they were changing the gender of historical figures and the races of historical figures. And it was a wreck. And a lot of people were going, man, don't touch Gemini because it's garbage. But they've done a really, really good job at coming back around now and really providing a very solid platform. I don't use it a lot for content creation. I do use it, though, for research purposes. So I think it's good in that arena. But those would still be my top 3 chat bots. Now, there's a ton of other tools that you can use as well. But as far as chat bots go, I rank them ChatGPT, Claude, and then Gemini.
Yeah, there's so many out there. I feel like every day I'm like, there's some really cool video tools that a lot of the video YouTubers are using now. Spotter.ai, and it's going to be somewhere it's generating like these amazing thumbnails where thumbnail is always a big hurdle for creators.
Oh, sure.
And, now it's like generating them and giving you it's going to be insane. I feel like this is only the beginning. It's moving faster than the internet. If this is dial-up right now, our version of dial-up, this is going to be insane. What that looks like moving forward, man.
Well, that's why it's so hard to keep up with it, too, because, there are literally hundreds of apps coming out every day. And I got people asking me hey, have you heard about this? Have you heard about that? And I hadn't heard about that one, So, but there's a website out there. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called There's an AI for That.
Okay.
And that's a repository it's a library of AI apps, and it's updated every day of all the apps that are coming out, at least the ones that get submitted. And they get hundreds of editions every day. So there's an AI for that.com.
Okay. That's
not
a great
sponsor.
One. Okay.
It's a great resource.
Okay, definitely. Okay, stay updated on AI. Mention that in the show notes. And, you've been, before we land the plane, brother, I want to talk to you about just, again, getting back to just kind of getting in the trenches. And I'm curious to know, because I've seen you, again, just speak and your podcast, you're a creator, and you've written a book. And let's talk to me about where you're at. Where's Larry Roberts at right now? We're recording this late 2024. Getting into the horizon is right. We're edging towards 2025.
Sure.
Like, for the creator who is trying to build, and these are business-minded content creators, for creators that are listening, watching, that want to build a brand, to monetize their message and their platform, and seeing it like what you're doing, how are you positioning yourself to build this successful creator brand? And in addition to managing so many things, because I look from afar, I'm like, how is he managing his energy, his capacity to do all those things and yet still pay the bills and still manage to do, what he loves to do? So can you speak a little bit about that? I know there's a lot of questions in there, but
there are a lot of questions there. If we're talking about how I'm moving forward, we're really growing as a production house, as a podcast production agency.
The company is, okay, gotcha.
For branded podcasts.
Gotcha. Red Hat Media.
Red Hat Media.
Gotcha.
And something that just happened for us last week was one of our clients is now an award-winning podcaster. They won a Signal Award for creativity and marketing.
Right.
So now, as of last week, we are officially an award-winning production house. So I think that's pretty awesome. I'm pretty stoked about that deal. So, you see me doing all these different things, but it's all to drive everything back to the business, One of the other things that I have too, though, because I actually have 2 companies, and another company that I have is called Branded. And Branded, I partnered with Sarah Losi, and her and I work together on branding for folks. So a lot of the podcast deals that we do here at Red Hat, we actually run them through Branded. And Sarah and I collaborate on that. So bringing in partnerships and having help is a huge part of how I maintain my energy, and I'm able to do as much as I'm doing and go as much as I go because I have a support system in place. I have a business partner. I have my wife, who's also always there for me and always been super supportive.
Super important. Yeah.
Through all the nonsense and going, honey, I'm going to leave my 21-year career and I'm going to go do podcasting. And she's like, what? Yeah. So there's a lot of that. And then also, the Podfest community is huge. Chris Kremitzos, I can't thank him enough.
Shout out to
He's
Chris,
always
man.
on the lookout for me, and he's always helped me grow. He's given me that stability. He's given me that direction in growing. So community is huge, and having a support system is huge. But at the same time, it's also understanding who you are, and what you want to do.
Man.
I have big, hairy, audacious goals, and I want to accomplish those. And in order to do that, you have to allocate the time and the resources to make it happen. And a lot of people don't see the flip side. A lot of people don't see that when I left my job on January 4th of 2021, I sold all my toys. I had a Ford Raptor. I had the cat daddiest truck in the freaking world with a $9,000 booming system that I had custom built it was the cat daddiest of all cat daddy trucks. And I had to sell it because I couldn't make a payment on it. And at the same time, run my business. So I had to make those personal sacrifices. We had to pay off all of our debt before I made that jump. We had to make sure that we had a plan in place before I made that jump. So that's a lot of the things that the people that are out there that have these similar goals, they don't see. They don't see the personal sacrifice. They don't see that I'm working 7 days a week, bro. I'm working at 5 a.m. I'm working at 11 p.m. Now, I'm not working all hours of the day like that. I do take breaks from time to time, but there's not a day that goes by, not one, that I'm not doing something or some things that's work related. It's just how it is, but I make time for the wife. I got 2 new puppies in there. So I make time for my pups. I make time for
your
life.
non-negotiables.
Yeah. But at the same time, some of my goals are non-negotiable either. You know what I mean? So, and that's where you got to get that mentality in place, and you have to be around people that support that mentality, and you have to fuel that fire. I consume a lot of motivational content. I consume a lot of content from folks that have already done what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to learn from them. And that's the mentality that I've seen work for others, and it's starting to work for me too. So, and I'm confident that if there's somebody out there that is wanting to turn this creative hobby into a career, you can do it, but you got to get your mindset right in order to make it happen.
That Mamba mentality.
Mamba mentality, for real.
LarryRoberts.com, and also listen to Branded.com is a podcast. And then, of course, Red Hat Media. And we'll make sure that we link up the book as well under the Red Hat, and all the other things that Larry, I'm pretty sure he's going to be coming to a city near you, y'all. So stay tuned for the Larry Roberts tour, y'all, the Red Hat tour. Make sure you get your boy if you want some entertainment, man. If you want some breakdancing, some opener, Larry, holla at your boy, man.
You put on Ice Ice Baby, and I'll probably have to step it up a little bit. So,
my man, listen, dude, it's been a pleasure, man. I mean, I know we chatted up at the events. I know we don't really get to talk too much at the live events because I'm in post mode and your work. I'm busy with a lot of the stuff, and I really enjoy doing that with you guys. And so anyways, it's just been an honor, man, just to reconnect, talk about what's been going on lately, and just let you know, man, that I support you. I know we're not always connected on social media, but as you know, we're always cheering you from the side. And the fact that you really got your vision dialed in, you got good people, you have a community, and you work hard, brother. So much love and respect to you, man. And,
right back to you, Ozeal. This has been a pleasure. I know we said we was only going 30, 45 minutes, and we went for, I think, over an hour. But that just shows that we can have these conversations, and then we can get in that vibe. And I enjoy talking to you. I enjoy hanging with you. I wish we had more opportunities to do it. I'm up here in Dallas. You're down there in Houston, so it makes it a little tough. But man,
we're neighbors. We're going to make it happen. We're going to make it happen.
We're going to make it happen for sure. So thank you so very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and anything I can do for you, I'm always right here. So hit me up.
Thank you, brother.